Berklee, this is the Red Room in Cafe 939. And we are so excited to have some distinguished musicians with us today who are not just distinguished musicians, but also phenomenal educators and just all around good people. These are the Headhunters, and we will engage in an interview for the next 55 minutes. We're grateful that you're here both in person and online. We are here as Africana Studies here at Berklee and really excited to engage in this conversation. By way of introductions, to my far left is master percussionist Bill Summers. Closer to me on the left side is drummer Mike Clark. On my immediate right is Big Chief Donald Harrison. To his right is bass player Chris Severin. And to his far right, my far right, Kyle Roussel, the Headhunters. By way of commercial, they will be at City Winery here in Boston at 7:30 p.m. this evening for a one evening show celebrating the 50th anniversary of that historic recording, Headhunters, 1973. Bill, I'm coming to you first because you were in the original incarnation of the Headhunters. You and Harvey Mason and Benny Maupin, and of course, Paul Jackson Jr. Yeah. Oh, Paul Jackson. That's right, Paul Jackson. That's right, Paul Jackson on bass. I got you. And then, of course, Herbie Hancock. But tell us, Bill, how did that group come to existence, and particularly about that recording?
Herbie wanted to play some funk.
And let me ask you this. At that time in 73, were you all calling it funk, or what did you call the music?
I don't call, I like everything. I'm like Donald Harrison. Donald Harrison can rap better than most rappers. I'm serious. And he has respect for all kinds of music, and I do too. I listen to it. I just, man, come on. I don't put names to it because you can't name it. Just for label's sake, I met Herbie at UC Berkeley. I was attending school there, and I had a band called Bata Koto. And all we did is play Haitian, Cuban, Brazilian, traditional African music and dance. And we opened for him. And he saw the group and actually he introduced himself to me after the show and asked me if I wanted to come sit in with his group at the time with Buster Williams and all kinds of guys, and Julian Priester, Eddie Henderson, Jabba, yeah, and they all had the music was very esoteric. I couldn't understand shit they was doing, but I went to sit in, and I brought a few percussion instruments. This is how I met Herbie, and what happened. This is really very important. And when I came to sit in, I had a couple of conga. I had a conga and a quinto, a chequere, and a few hand percussion instruments. Please don't call my shit toys, because that's what they do. They say play your toys, and I ignore the sound man. I ignore them because I don't have to. I tell them I don't have no toys up here. My son plays toys, but this shit ain't toys. These are real instruments for some reason. But then let's get back to the story. Herb, it was at a club, and I put my gear on the side of the stage, not on the stage. I wouldn't be so presumptuous to put my stuff on the stage. Well, Herbie came in. I was so excited. I was there early, a couple of hours before the show even started. I was so excited. And Herbie walked in the door, and he walked towards the back, and he kind of looked to the right, and he looked at the percussion. He said, "What's all this shit?" And he kept walking back to the dressing room. Well, I went over and picked all my shit up and left. I didn't see him again for 6 months. But I had this Herbie. I wasn't a Herbie person at that point. And he came to do a lecture in the music department for Professor Ali Wilson, And I was Professor Ollie Wilson's TA. So I had to meet Herbie and bring him to the class. And on the way up to the class, he kept saying, man, don't I know you? And I'm like, yeah. So we finally talked about it. And Herbie's, I told him what happened. He said, did I do that? Did I do that? You mean I did that? He said, could you come and sit in tonight? And I said, yeah, sure. And I went and sat in, and over a period of, I was in 1971, 72, over that year, I got to know Herbie better and better. A very nice guy, very knowledgeable. And that's how I got in the band. One day Herbie called up and he said, hey, could you come down to LA, to Santa Monica Civic Auditorium and do a gig with me? You gonna actually pay me? I was thrilled because I hadn't gotten paid from him for other gigs. I was just sitting in. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. He said, we'll get your gear over there. And I went to Santa Monica, had my room, and I got the special treatment, SIR, picked my gear up, put it on the plane. I got to the gig, and I'm like, well, where's the band? There was a harp on the stage and a grand piano and my percussion. I said, where's the band, Herbie? He said, it's me, you, and Alice Coltrane. That was it. That was my first gig with Herbie. And the rest is history. I went to his house about a year later, almost a few months later, and he said, you got to be there at such and such a time. I went in, and in the room was Benny Maupin. Herbie had kept him over from the other band, and Harvey Mason was on drums. Benny, Herbie, myself, and Paul. And that was it.
Let me stay with you just for 1 second, and we'll make our way around, because anytime you invoke the name Dr. Ollie Wilson, who I also studied with at University of California, Berklee, and who, literally changed my life, and I'm doing what I'm doing now because of his influence in my life at a very pivotal time. And one of the things that Dr. Wilson would always do, he would bring a transcription of Watermelon Man, and he would talk about the Babenzele people. And can you talk about the influence of the Hinduhi?
Yeah, that's what I did with this. I feel this. Well, when we did the record, I pulled Herbie aside. I said, man, I want you to hear something. And I played him some of this music. People call them pygmies. Don't do that. That's right. That's the N-word.
That's right.
You don't want to do that. Just like Aborigines in Australia, they're Koori. They got a couple of ethnic groups, and they don't like that. They don't like that Aborigine or pygmy. They don't like that. But they're Babenzele. That's just one of the groups. There's Babingas. Right. They're all right. These people. But, I heard this music that they played, and it's just, this guy's got a one-note piece of cane, and he's, I said, God, what the hell is, and they over there jamming and telling stories, and they turned me on to it. That's how I got turned on to it. Ollie Wilson was an electronic composer. That's right. And not very many people know who Professor Ollie Wilson is. Son Rod did, mm-hmm. But not very many people. You were a privileged person to have been in this company and influenced. He was a great composer. Yeah. One of the best.
Mike Clark, you joined the band 74, 75.
Probably the end of 73.
End of 73. Talk to us about you coming into the band. 73 would have been Headhunters. 74 would have been Thrust. Were you on that Thrust album? And talk to us about,
Guilty as charged. I was on Thrust, yes. Let's see, how did it happen? The bassist Paul Jackson and I were beyond best friends. I've never had a best friend that was that much of a best friend. He was like my brother. Like there was nothing. We shared our lives together, and I'm a jazz drummer, and so I was playing a jazz gig one night, and Paul Jackson came in. I didn't know him, And this guy, who was Paul, was staring at me the whole time I was playing. So I figured he was a drummer. He was making me nervous. And he was sitting right close to the drum set. And he watched everything I did, and I was starting to bug out ever so slightly. So on the break, I went over to him, and I said, I know you're a musician. What's your name? And he gave me his business card and told me his name. And he said, I play organ. And this was an organ gig I was on. So I said, you want to come up and play with us? Because I liked him straight off. We liked each other. It was a good vibe. So he came up and played, and he sang and played organ, and he played the bass on the B3. And I had an organ trio, guitar, organ. Anyway, he turned the joint out big time. He blew the whole lid off the place, and I loved it. And him and I, we struck beyond the groove. It was beyond the word groove and pocket and all that stuff. Those are words that somebody made up. This was past that. So that night, I gave him my business card because I was trying to work all I could. And that night when I got home to Oakland, in my driveway, there was a car that I didn't recognize. And I'm like, who's in my driveway, man? And it was Paul. He got out, and he had a jug of wine and a few other things with him. And I said, come on in. And that was it. And we were still there talking at 7 a.m. My wife woke up, and who's this cat? Why? So we started playing together, and he played upright bass. He didn't play the Fender bass yet. And we did a jillion, whoever played jazz in the Bay Area, we played with them. And so he also worked at a music store, and he bought a Fender Precision bass to my house and just set it in the music room, and it stayed there for a long time, 3 years. And then one day he picked it up and he said, play that funky stuff, you play that upside down funk, you play that. And he played bass just like you hear him play with Herbie Hancock. He didn't warm up, he didn't figure it out, he just took it out of the box and did it because he played flamenco, a little bit of fake flamenco guitar, and he applied that to the bass because I had a guitar there and he always played flamenco guitar and drove me crazy. So he played so many 16th notes, I said, if you're going to play bass like that, man, we need to hire a bass player, And so we immediately, to avoid putting the upright in the car, he started playing this electric bass, and so we got super popular. Then he went to, so Herbie Hancock hired him. And at this point, we were sharing a pad that was the epicenter of all the stuff going down in Oakland. And, or a lot of the stuff. All the jazz musicians came over and jammed with us like all the time. So then he told Herbie about me, and meanwhile, Herbie had been calling the house to talk to Paul all the time, but Paul was never there. He was a real social guy. So I ended up having all kinds of conversations with Hancock, and he never knew I was a drummer. So Paul recommended me, and I went over, and I went in there, and I had my Gretsch 18-inch bass drum and my K cymbals, and I tried to play all my Tony Williams and Elvin and Philly Joe stuff. I was going to show him that these were my heroes, and I'm coming from this space. And he said, no, man, we're not doing that. He said, I've already done all that. I'm looking for something else. And I didn't really care. Once I found out they were playing funk, this is going to sound weird, I didn't care if I got the gig. I was kind of like, well, he is famous, but I'm not sure I want to play this stuff. So anyway, he said, put a pillow on the bass drum, because it had an open sound, and play this funky stuff that Paul tells me that you do. And I would put backbeats wherever I wanted them and play all of this weirdness. So I did that, and we played for about 5 minutes. It wasn't even a tune. It was similar to Actual Proof. And then, of course, once I went on the cymbal, it all became bebop or post-bop or whatever you want to call it to me. It just was in 8/8 instead of splang-a-lang. And he dug it and hired me right on the spot. He said, okay, I'll see you in Chicago on Monday. And he walked right out, and he had this long black coat on with a double buttons on each side. He looked like Darth Vader. And he just walked out. And I said to Paul, does that mean I got the gig? And Paul's like, I don't know, man. So a road manager called me and sent me a plane ticket, and that's how I joined the band. And that's it.
Wow. Big Chief Donald Harrison, we know you have played with everybody, and I mean that in the most revered and esteemed way possible. We also know you as a master educator, not just in New Orleans, but just before the interview, seeing what you have done with just a collection of students and sharing something from your phone and kind of inspiring that. This group, Headhunters, with you in it, has a different sound to it. Can you talk about your contribution to the music and in many ways what you are expanding and what you're doing in this season?
Yeah, I just get up and hear a sound and try to fit in with that sound. Use all my experiences to fit into, because I'm a team player, really. I'm not like, I'm the star kind of guy. I'm a team player. I always teach my students, if the band sounds good, then they will notice you. If it's all about you, then they won't really notice what you can do with the music, because you're just overplaying, and it's not about that. It's about the collection of the aggregate collection of humanity that's present, not just on the bandstand, but also in the audience. So I just try to, a lot of times I'm listening to the band, but I'm also putting myself in front of the band in the audience, like I'm an audience member, listening to the totality of it. So just try to use that kind of approach. But I wanted to play with all the people who made up the sounds that I loved. In some kind of way, I've always been connected to that. I don't know why I got the chance, the opportunity to play with like the innovators of almost every style of, on this side, jazz music and funk music and soul music. It's like the guys who really made it up. So I just try to bring all those things up when they call for all experiences and play in a moment with the musicians. But I try to stick with guys who have that same kind of trajectory, where you can hear a lot of depth in their playing. Because I learned something. Every time Chris does something, it enhances my understanding. Or Mike Clark plays something, or Bill, or Kyle. I'm always like, because Kyle has a way of playing these extended chords. So I listen to that, and I pay attention to everything that everybody's doing. And then I try to ingest a little bit of it into my fabric. So 15 years of playing with over 200 masters, and that with that kind of thinking, it enhances. I think it enhances me, and just bringing it together to the forefront. Right now, I'm working on what I call a multiverse idea of music. When they say that, quantum string theory, but I break it down to this to help people understand why in my world, why the idea of the older musicians telling me, like Bill said, that we think of all music the same, is that we're using the same scales, we're using the same rhythms, so all of us are using the same ingredients to make a thought for that moment. So that's, after playing with all these different bands, that's what I came to, that it's all the same. And a way to really help you, just a layman besides musicians, if you think of a chicken and you cook that chicken in China, it's going to be something else, but it's the same chicken. But if you cook it in Jamaica, it's the same chicken, but it's like that. So you could take that chicken all around the world and tell all these chefs, I know where he's going, but let me say that steak, something different. You could take that steak all the way around the world, and then let everybody cook it, and and it's gonna be the same steak. It's gonna be the same steak. The ingredients that made this taste like it is comes from the same source. So that's just what we're doing with music, and it bespeaks to humanity on a higher level. So that's a way of looking at this thing and bringing it around.
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. Even the coded language is beautiful when we see the connection. We pick up on that.
Donald played some music for me the other day. Now, I made a comment before that, and I firmly believe this. If you're a conformist, you cannot innovate. If you conform to shit all the time, how you going to innovate? So Donald plays, he told me he was going to do this, but I couldn't quite grasp it. I said, what's Donald's out of his fucking mind? So Donald done lost it. But he played what his idea for me. Now he took one tune, one song, and made an album out of it, or a project. One song. And I'm like, yeah, Donald, let me hear it. And he made it a reggae song, then he made it an Afro-Cuban treatment on it, a funk treatment, a bebop treatment. One, I had never seen an elephant be a monkey. But he did. You don't know who this is.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
I saw John Coltrane, Don't Long This Month, and some other great musicians playing together when I was a kid. Amazing. But then you have people like Donald King comes along.
Yeah.
You have, this is the Pope.
Yeah.
You don't even know it.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson couldn't shine his shoes. You know what I mean? I don't mean that like in a derogatory sense. But the genius.
Yeah.
You can't find this often. You know what he is and what he means to music.
Yeah.
And the planet.
And plus, he knows all about boxing and football.
And some other things too.
Well, yeah, that,
We're privileged to have a guy.
Yeah.
Minnie Marvin was good.
Yeah.
And he was in the band. But down here, bro, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Big Chief down.
Big Chief. That's right. Big Chief. Big Chief. Chris, we're coming to you. I mean, you put on a clinic this morning on that bass. You, you know, your. Let me say it this way: to have some of your students here, who came out of the woodworks because they heard that you were going to be in town, to come to sit with you and see you again, master educator. You know, talk to us about this project for you and what it means to be a part of this group, and what else are you doing? What else are you working on?
Well, I heard this music in the 70s. I saw these guys in the 70s, and it was unbelievable. I was in an R&B band. We were trying to play this music for people, you know, like just putting it in the general public. We would play a dance tune, and then we would play Sly. You know, I mean, this tune is involved, right? And we found a way to get people to accept this music. We liked it so much with the group that I always wanted to play with these dudes. I never thought I would be on the stage with them, but I really dug the music that much where we forced it on regular people, because at one point, it wasn't like that until it became a big record, you know, to play something like this, and people are like, they on the floor dancing, and they stop for a second and say, okay, well, we need to see where this is at. We found out how to get them to respond to it, and it was like one of the tunes in the playlist, you know, but then it was considered something new. You know, I don't even know what they called it then. You know, they got new names for everything. You know, people pick up something, they need to be able to explain it to people, so they say, okay, well, we're going to call it this, so we can have something to identify it with. But getting to how I became a part of this, Bill and I was on the road with Diane Reeves. And Bill, we start talking about New Orleans. Bill said, oh, man, I'm going to move to New Orleans. Of course, I didn't believe him. You know, Bill Summers, why would you want to move to New Orleans? You're playing on all of these great sessions in L.A. and playing with Quincy Jones and all of these people. So I didn't believe him, to make a long story short. But then he made the move. And when he got there, you know, he called me a few times to play some gigs. Well, I said, man, wow, you got Mike Clark and Donald was in the band. See, I remember Donald from high school. I'm a little older than him, but I met him at NOCA, New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. And I said, man, this dude here, I mean, he was really young. And I'm like, man, this dude got something. I don't know what it is, but I like this dude. And then he started playing, you know, all of the straight ahead stuff, but it had that other kind of substance in it to make you say, yeah. Now, I don't know what that is, but when I hear it, it's like, yeah, I feel like that. Everybody don't feel like that when they play that music. I guess it's that same steak that he's talking about that you take everywhere, you know. I guess that's what it is. Maybe I'll call it that. But, you know, so when I found out these guys was in the band, and then I said, well, you know, who's playing piano? They said, Carl Roussel. I said, Carl Roussel? Carl Roussel was in one of my classes. The quietest dude in the class. You know, I mean, he just absorbed everything. And then all of a sudden, I heard him. I'm like, Shannon Powell's a drummer in New Orleans. He said, well, I'm using Carl Roussel. I said, well, I don't know. I know Carl, but Carl was always quiet. And then I heard him on a gig, and I'm like, wow. So you got all of these cats together, and Bill asked me to do the gig. I said, I'm in. You know, the music that I always wanted to play, the people I want to play with, the vibe is great. You know, everything works in terms of personalities, which is really, really important. I've been in situations where the guys were great, unbelievable musicians, but you didn't want to sit next to them. I don't want to tell y'all what I call them. You know, when we talk individually, I'll let you know. But anyway. So that's the way I became a part of this, and I've been enjoying it ever since. You know, I've played a lot of gigs with a lot of people. Like Donald's, his New Orleans thing is just unbelievable. And because I played with some of those people, like Dr. John, Alan Toussaint, and the Neville Brothers, I understood what I needed to do whenever it's presented on the stage. So with all of that, with everything that you could possibly play on the stage, you know, this is where I'm at. I'm on the stage with these cats.
Donald, come on.
Before you get to Kyle, I just want to pick up on something that the way I think that might help you younger people. When a group like this, or leaders like this call me, I consider myself the luckiest person in the world, but I also realize how seriously they take their music and what they're doing. The music, this music that they're creating, that they put together, it's like a child, like a real living entity. So when a person calls you to play their record or calls you to play in their band, you have to take it very seriously and try to make yourself come up to the level of what they think the music should be. And cherish each moment. If you do that, you know, respect the music and the fact that someone has called you to play on something do something that's the most precious thing besides human life to them. If you think of that, then you'll do your work and try to come up to par and be part of that unit in a natural way. where everybody's loving each other and hearing each other. And I love this band because it's one of the bands where everybody wants to see everybody do good. When you know, everybody supports each other. But I think if you guys, you know, just your generation, and I see you guys get along good, if you think like that, it will help the music when you get on the bandstand. That everybody's trying to help each other, and everybody respects the band, and especially the leader. A lot of times, I'll ask a leader, well, I'm going to say it like this. The first song I wrote for Art Blakey, I had an idea what I wanted him to do, but he listened to it one time, and Art Blakey came up with drum orchestrations that if you listen to every song he plays that same orchestration, and it fits the song so perfectly you can't even believe that he made it up. When I saw him on the spot listening to it one time, then he sat down at the drums. But the amazing thing, his ability to do that, he asked me, was that what I wanted on the song? Wow. The great Art Blakey asked me, was that what I wanted? Or that was what I was hearing? And I said, no, Art Blakey, that's not what I'm hearing. It's way better than anything I'm hearing. But just his respect for someone else and their ideas, that's all I'm trying to get across. Same thing with George Benson. He was playing one of my songs, and after we finished, he said, that's the way you want me to play on it? The same thing. No, that's way better than what I was thinking of. So you tell me how to play it. Anyway, go ahead, yeah.
Kyle, we got a chance to hear you earlier, and I mean, as a piano player, man, your vocabulary is gorgeous. I mean, the way that you create not just the upper structures, as Donald has said, but your approach to it, and it's clear that it's Kyle in the band and not Herbie Jr., if I can say it that way, right? And so, talk to us about what it means, for you to be in this band, and how do you see this season of your career?
It's just a real pleasure and an honor to be here just to learn. Like Chris said, he was my teacher, and I grew up listening and cherishing this music. And these guys are such legendary, masterful musicians. I'm really just here to learn and soak up everything that they can give, not just musically, but just as a man, as a human being. I got in the band I've been playing with the band about 15 years now, on and off. I remember I went to Bill Summers' house, another musician that invited me over to your house to have like a little jam session, and I started doing gigs with you in the jazz salsa band. And you're like, okay, the Headhunters, we're gonna go do this record, I think in Indianapolis. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, of course. I'm like 19, so I'm like, and it's just been a great journey to learn from these guys. I want to know, like, how did you start playing? I want to sit in the audience and just and hear the stories like anyone else. So it's just a great pleasure to be here and soak it all up.
Awesome. I'll come back to you, Bill. Grab that mic for me.
Wait a minute.
Come on. Okay, come on.
Kyle is not telling a story, right?
All right.
That's bullshit. No. He's very. Let me explain something to you. What I liked about him was his humility. You understand? It was more. It was like, I'm a kid. I'm 5 years old, just like a 5-year-old child. I enjoy life so much. I can't tell how much. I just enjoy getting up in the morning. Okay, now I meet this guy. I'm sitting and I watched him a couple of times, and I told Michael, I said, man, this is a young guy. His name is Kyle Roussel. And the first thing Michael said, can he play? I said, man, I think we should use this dude, Kyle. Now, Kyle hadn't matured musically yet, but I could see the jewel in the lotus. I could see it. Now, what struck me also was he was a good person. Now, if you got a guy that can play, and he got a good heart, and he's got humility, then you got more than the ingredients you need to help nurture this person. Not only that, I already knew because my father was a killing man, or a good man, and so was my mama was a good person. This boy, I could look at him and tell he's going to make a great husband and a good father. And that's why I support him, because he's a great father. And only a good father can be a good musician. That's how I think. That's just how I think. I love him. I've supported him from day one, and I will continue to, because he's a bad musician. He's really good. Now, thank you.
Now we've heard the real
Did
story.
I say that right, Carl? That was just like he wrote it.
I want to ask each of you, and you can jump in or choose to pass, what does it mean in this season of so much duress and so much destruction and so much chaos in the land? What does it mean to be a musician? What does it mean to have the influence and impact, and shall I say the power to uplift people, to inspire people, to encourage people, to show people hope, to show people that there is possibility, to move from a conformance sensibility to an improvisational and innovative sensibility, to look at the fact that we have musicians of different generations who are up here and playing harmonically together, but also creating tension so that it can explode and expound into something new. What does that mean in this season, particularly for our students who are here, who are wondering about my contribution, and is there a place for me, and is there a space for my voice in the national and international landscape? Can any of you jump on that and talk into that? Talk about that. Jump on the mic. He said, "We're not musicians. We're physicians.
We cure people."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? I'm just looking at Donald's socks and Kyle's shoes. And look at my shoes. I feel inferior. I was good until I checked that out. And now I'm like, man, my shoes are sad. This is, I just was going like, man, I woke up early. I couldn't. Okay. I think Herbie Hancock taught me this, that all human beings have, let's call it a diamond. I can't think of the word he said, because that was 50 years ago. In our lives, we all have this. We also have that other thing. Positive and negative is part of the universe, you know. And so if you can bring that out, if you can respect the dignity of your own life, you can respect the dignity of all others. You dig? That's really, because no amount of legislation is going to change the human heart. So as artists, I feel we're all different, so maybe everybody doesn't feel this way, but as an artist, I feel it's my job to try to make the best world I can, and the parts of my life that I try to hide from people that are unattractive, I'm repairing constantly, and have been as long as I can remember. That's the assignment. So when you play, if your heart is pure, and if you really are playing for, you know, other people, for their happiness, which could translate to world peace, maybe. I don't think in my time, but that I have left, but maybe, you know, cause and effect is like if you throw a rock in a pond, there's a ripple. So for every thought, word, and deed, I think that there's a reaction. So the more we can be not greedy, not selfish, and love for ourselves and especially for others, then that's also a rock in the pond that will have an effect too. So I think that's why people practice so much. When you're young and you shed all the time, it's because you want people to dig you. Man, look how good I am, But I think after a while, when you're trying to perfect your music, what you're really trying to do is perfect your heart. So when you play with people, your contribution is pure. And that's a hell of an assignment. I was going to mention my shoes again to close this off, but I can't come up with anything, so I'm just going to leave it right there.
Oh my God. Mike has got me laughing so much. All right. For me, when I'm on the bandstand with these cats, all of the issues and problems don't even exist. It don't exist for that moment. And hopefully, when you're listening to the music, you don't think about your problems or your issues while you're listening to the music. And I figure if that could happen for an hour or 90 minutes, you should be able to extend whatever that is you're feeling over your whole life, the period that you have left, you know what I mean? And it can be done. I mean, here again, not necessarily knowing what that is, but you know what that feel like. So how do you continue that feeling in the rest of your day? And that's the way I try to deal with it, But there's no problems when we're on the bandstand. It is what it is. And you don't have any negativity thrown your way. It's just that moment is that moment. We lived in that moment, and we're all happy about it, and it makes you feel good when you're on a stage with these guys. Now I can't speak for everybody in other situations, because I think it's that bad energy that you bring to the music, and you can hear that and feel that. So, for me, when I get up here with these guys, I don't feel that, and I'm free for that moment, and I try to, like I said, extend that in my life, and hopefully we can get you to do the same.
I don't really have much to add. There you go. That's something beautiful. Only thing I would add is that when you look at what the universe is comprised of and how it works, there's positivity needs to be here, and negativity needs to be here for it to continue. So when you look at it from that perspective, I don't have an answer, but I can say what I can be, and that's hopefully something positive, and hang with the people who are trying to do that as well, and be that force. Just try to be that force. Like John Coltrane said, he wanted to be a force for good. So that besides all the things that we study in religions and scientific world, we studied things from a lot of ways of looking at what's going on. So I just get up every day and try to do as much work as I can to do that. And I remember Art Blakey, this is one of the most beautiful things that I heard about a group of musicians. He said when they were doing bebop, that they came up with the idea of making sure when a person came up with a beautiful idea to talk about that person and that they did it, and to revere that person's contribution. And he said if they did use some of it, they would mention that they got it from this guy. So he used to say, once an idea is presented to the world, it belongs to the world. Just give credit to the inventor because it gives him his respect, and he will love you for that. If you don't, then he might not like you for it. But I try to be positive and get over it because it's happened to me a few times. I really appreciate Bill Summers acknowledging something that I think is a new idea, the way I'm approaching it. So it warms my heart because there are not many people who do that in this lifetime. So you guys have a choice to, and one of the things that also came out of that is that they're all famous because they all supported each other. And everybody knows this is what Monk did, this is what Bud Powell did, because they did it first. They didn't have any jealousy issues like that. They didn't have it. So you guys could, maybe take that if you want to and try to make a new way, a positive way, and acknowledge each other and know that you're going to get to yours. If you do your work, you're going to get to yours. Don't worry about that. Let me finish with this last thing. This last example I tell my students when I first meet them. So everything is about your talent and your hard work. Your talent will manifest from your hard work. And I give them this example. If you take a shovel and you go in a park and you dig one time, and then you do that every day for 50 years, somebody's going to see your hard work. It's going to be undeniable because you're going to see the biggest hole in the world. And somebody's going to say, who did that? They're going to say him. They're going to see your work. You won't even be able to hide it. You won't be able to hide it. So just get up and do your diligence from the love in your heart. And you won't have to worry about all that other stuff, man.
Yeah, I would just add that it starts with you, that you try to be the best example of positivity that you can be, and then expound that to your immediate family and friends, and then expound that to your household, and expound that to your neighborhood, to your community, then expound that to your city, to your state, to your country. But the important thing is that it's an action. It requires work. It's not a state that you're in. It requires that you do the work to be a force of good, and to be a positive example. And also that as an artist, realize that your experiences are valid, and that they're what's going to make you, like he was saying, young Herbie, I can't be Herbie, first because I can't play like Herbie, but second because I'm not Herbie, and my experiences in coming up as a person and playing music are different than Herbie. I remember growing up in church, and I, was playing in church, and I'm just young, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be here. We playing these old hymns, and we playing this song. And then I got older, and I was the only guy my age that knew these hymns or that could play these things. And that brings a certain thing to my music. So you may think like, oh, I don't want to play this gig, or I grew up playing this and playing that, and this is lame and that, but that's going to be the thing that separates you from everybody else. So all that stuff is valid and useful as an artist. You may not know it now, but it'll manifest itself later.
Okay. We have 5 minutes left. I want to ask. Yep, give him some love. I want to ask rapid fire questions. Rapid fire questions. I'm coming down the line. Rapid fire questions. 2 things, people, groups, bands, projects that we should be listening to right now. 2 projects, bands, people that we should be listening to right now. Going back to you, Kyle. 2 bands, groups, projects.
Jonathan Baptiste and what was I listening to? I was listening to a band, Ranky Tanky, that just won Best Regional Roots Album in the Grammys.
Chris, two bands, people, projects that we should be listening to.
The Meters and Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Mike Clark, 2 bands, projects, people that we should be listening to.
John Coltrane and Miles Davis.
Bill Summers, 2 bands, people, groups, projects.
Forward Back, and Ka-chow. Ka-chow.
So we're going to leave out Summer's Heat?
I want to add one thing to this is I was so fortunate when I was young, and even I mean I'm only 25, but I've had a hard life. You can really, but I had well, Herbie Hancock's a big name, but I have to use his name because for 5 years, 5 or 6 years, he was a huge influence, not just on my music but my life. Buster Williams and Woody Shaw and Bobby Hutcherson. All these guys were not only really nice to me when I was young, but they encouraged, when I was discouraged and felt like giving up, every one of those guys, especially Buster, was like, man, never give up your dream, ever. You got to put the work in, but never give up. And that is with me till I'm out of here. And that's why I'm still here doing this. Those guys really instilled that. It became part of my bone marrow, not to give up. Because I do like to argue. I could have been a lawyer and made some bread, but here I am playing drums. Okay.
Let me add something to that. Listen, if you have a job and you want to retire, you have the wrong job.
Yeah.
Y'all letting that marinate? Yeah.
Man, somebody said, when you going to retire, Bill? Are you out of your mind? I'm going to retire from going to Soweto, for Paris. I just came from Brazil. We're down on it. Why would I retire? You crazy?
Donna, we asked a question, rapid fire question. Name 2 groups, bands, projects, or something that we should be listening to right now.
Charlie Parker.
And
I would love if y'all would listen to my next record, but who else could you listen to that would change your life? All of them, really. But Bird is the cat who messed me up. I would say go listen to some music from Africa and Charlie Parker. Go to the root of humanity and find something in that diaspora and Charlie Parker in the Western Hemisphere. That'll get you straight.
Bill Summers, master percussionist. Mike Clark, drummer. Big Chief Donald Harrison. Chris Severin. And Kyle Roussel, the Headhunters. They'll be at City Winery, Boston tonight at 7:30. You got to be there. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great day.